So very happy to be here. I'm New York based, so it's fun to always meet a new community of fashion people. My name is Dr. Amanda Parks. I'm currently the Chief Innovation Officer at Pangaia, which is excuse me, a fashion brand, but we have a lot of internal R&D and material science going on in the background. This is how I identify myself as a fashion scientist, which is bringing together, this is how I have always been and still am, kind of half in overalls or in the lab fixing and engineering and half being a fashionista. My background, I have a hybrid PhD between material science and computer science from the MIT Media Lab, which somehow led me mostly into biology and biofabrication, which is a complicated, roundabout way of figuring out different things about working with interactive textiles and wearables, and also working on kind of optimizing biofeedback algorithms inside of sort of how do we figure out how materials and organisms behave with digital influences. So very much my background is in this hybrid nature of the physical and the digital worlds interacting and us at that intersection. And one of the really important things to remember is that in fashion, we're always using physical materials that have been in some way either grown through the natural world or created through the chemical world. And we need to be sort of aligned with what are those materials made of, how are they creative, and this sort of back and forth that we are part of the community of nature, I guess is sort of how I would tie back into what Jordana was talking about. So, oh yes, and this was the first company I started after my PhD was in algae biofuels, which has influenced a lot of my work in textiles, and kind of have come around. I was simultaneously working in, couture fashion, like doing 3D printed structures for the runway while running a biotech company. So this is kind of how the convergence of my job and my current company has emerged. So Pangaia. We consider ourselves a material science company manifesting in the roles of fashion brand. We are UK based, so we have a much bigger presence in Europe, but it's slowly trickling in to the US. And we consider ourselves a global collective, so we have this sort of combination of scientists, designers, artists, philanthropic collaborators, and we work at the intersection of science, purpose, and design. So taking the best of the aesthetic world and combining it with the best of the scientific world for a purpose-driven company. And we're a certified B Corp, and from our founding, we have operated in this space to, from the very beginning, setting up responsible supply chains, bringing in the newest, best in class of innovations for the near term and the long term, and driving everything about our company through a business model that is aligned with how we can really have responsible impact. So if you don't know us, you probably might recognize us from our sort of bold colored tracksuits. This went viral during the pandemic. We were making sustainable work from home gear. We were on every list, which allowed us to really expand. We went from sort of launch to $75 million within 16 months, which is not at all normal for a fashion brand. But happily and luckily, we were able to cipher this profit into my research lab. So every time somebody was buying a tracksuit, I was like, yes, we get to do more research. And it allowed us to do a lot of breakthrough launches within 2 to 3 years. So we just hit 4 years old as a company. So we're still very young, but have done quite a bit so far. So as a fashion brand video, you didn't see a piece of clothing in there. And that's very much on purpose to say we are mission driven at our core. And the clothing that we create, the apparel that we create is an output of the embodiment of an impact model that is based around nature. And so the way that we think about this and the kind of the philosophy that I developed for the company early on was we're trying to basically rebuild and rebalance our relationship with nature. And this basically should apply to kind of every industry. We're in the climate change crisis, and every company should be looking at this through a particular lens. And so to kind of go back a little bit, I think that our relationship with nature from kind of basically the time of sort of the pre-Renaissance was looking at it from, we started with like worshiping nature, being in an age of wonder about it, and then moving through into an age of reason in the Renaissance, where we're trying to kind of control and understand the nature, and how do we kind of relate to it directly. And then as we moved into the Industrial Revolution, we started kind of exploring this nature of dominating and exploiting nature. And this is where things went wrong, the history of fossil fuels. And now, as we sort of have seen the long-term consequences of that, we're back in a place of reimagination, so we can take the best of the science and the technology and everything that we know about growth of the world and putting it back into a partnership with nature and a kind of rebalancing. So basically, what the material philosophy that I developed for our brand is what we call high-tech naturalism. And that is saying that there's a place of abundance all across nature. And that can be in things like agricultural waste. We grow crops for the particular food that they produce, but they also have giant amounts of other fibers that are grown there that we can use in other ways to side stream that. Or other places of abundance like the carbon excess that we've created through climate change, and we can start to utilize that as a material component. So we take this idea that we're looking at the world from a place of abundance and saying, how do we rebalance that? What do we utilize? And using the highest levels of science and tech to do that, to kind of have a responsible augmentation of the functionality of these natural materials. So this is about technology working in support of sustainability. And that's really a kind of, I've been through many different years and universities in terms of technological and scientific education. I don't know if anybody else has, but that is a very new concept. Technology and engineering education has been very much in this idea of, how can we just manifest forward with the possibility of technologies. And so this is, I think, a rethinking around those principles. So this idea of thinking about diversity and innovation for the kind of holistic industry transfer also applies to Pangaia. So I personally am more focused on materials themselves. That's one sort of area that we need to move forward with inside of fashion to change the entire industry. But we are, as a brand, and me personally, are supportive of many different models of transformation. And for the first that we think about is the material technology and processes, everything about, from manufacturing raw materials and up. But we also know that it's very important to have new business models and financial models. So how do we think about profit margins around sort of the marketing within brands? Like everything is, we know it goes back to the sort of the bottom line. And how do we start to think through different business models? So all the things that are not about just making new stuff, but how do we love what is out there about the aesthetic experience of fashion? And that's a whole new area of companies inside of fashion, and that's super exciting. There's virtual areas there, physical, right? So there's lots of different ways that you can start to innovate and have an impact, and even an environmental impact, by even having a digital business. So I think we have to look at and support, across these different models. I happen to be focused on the material part because that's what my background is. So, but that's a kind of more global way to think about, I think, the space of fashion innovation and how we can transform together. So a lot of what I get asked is often about how can you, be working towards responsible innovation and sustainability and still have a company that makes product, right? And so, and it's a really good question. And I think that the first point is to say, we're not living in a space where we're just never gonna have anything new again. And even if it's just down to, we're gonna need more underwear, right? So even if we resell everything in the world, but the point being that there are responsible ways to do that from a materials perspective, but it's also kind of a larger kind of global change in how we think about growth. And so this is one of my favorite theories from economist Kate Raworth. And she's developed this idea called donut economics. And I took Econ 101 as an undergraduate, and as I was taking all my engineering classes, and I remember being like, I just must be really bad at this because it makes no sense to me. How do we have continuous growth that never ties back into anything about the physical world? Because we all know that at the end of everything economic, all the numbers on paper, there is eventually some sort of material. There's a raw material. There's something there that's being sold. And that doesn't have the unlimited growth. And so this was the first time I was like, oh, here's how we can make sense of economic growth inside of the physical world. So the donut is what they call the safe and just space for humanity, which has an ecological ceiling and a social foundation. And inside of that space is where we can have growth. So what this means is that we have a social foundation where we're protecting ourselves and holistically the community of the globe, of the humanity, with basic resources, food, water, energy, all the things that we need to sustain life. But all of those things then have an ecological ceiling, which if we put, we go off in any one direction, right, we're moving into these dangerous zones. In the middle, we can have companies, build innovation, et cetera, but as long as we are not moving outside of this circle. And that's how we think about the future of businesses in general, and fashion in particular, because fashion, we all know the material impact of things, and we can directly measure across those metrics. So what Pangaia is doing is we've developed this model, what we call for an earth-positive company, and this is a combination of our research and development pillars and our impact pillars. And interestingly, as Georgiana was talking, we do not have a sustainability department at Pangaia. We have a combined responsible innovation team, which has our community working on impact, so environmental engineering, analysis of carbon, et cetera. And then we have R&D inside of that, which is our scientists, et cetera. And we're working in tandem on responsible innovation. And so we're basically looking at different models across what we prioritize around materials. So biodiversity, being fossil fuel free is really, really key, and those two things go together. And then, water health, responsible use of animals, which is not always about being entirely vegan, and we can talk about that a little bit after. And then, of course, waste reduction and utilization of waste. And then that goes kind of across what we're looking for when we are analyzing for carbon and analyzing for our overall business impact across multiple tiers. And they go together. So this idea of circularity and biodiversity, et cetera, with a combined, really deep, you have to incorporate the human space. I can talk endlessly about materials, but if we aren't protecting the humans that are making the things and in the communities around that, it's meaningless. And then a philanthropic element as well. So what we're looking at is sort of materials that have a functional advantage combined with a quantifiable reduced impact. So inside of our innovation spectrum, we look at the kind of the near term, the medium term, and the long term. And I call this evolution, revolution, and disruption. So evolution is, okay, we have cotton. What we want is, the best of organic cotton, and then moving that into regenerative cotton, right? So with the best in class of materials that are already out there. A revolution is sort of saying, okay, what is the next kind of step forward in this, right, in a new material? Are we developing a new lyocell technology that is 100% biomass based? Sort of these, looking at systems that are in place and how do we make them better? And then disruption is something that is a whole new industry shift. So like what we have with biofabrication, and we're looking at how do microbes actually start to grow our materials. And I'll go into that a little bit. So the point is that our business model is driven across these three pillars, that we have things that are coming out tomorrow and in 3 months and 6 months on our agenda, but we also I have an 8-year research plan for Pangaia, which that's just not how fashion is usually planned, and that's a huge differential inside of our model. We operate a lot more like a tech company. We also have a hybrid model that's from combining direct-to-consumer, so what you see on our web platforms and in retail as being for sale, but we also have a back-end B2B where we have, once we've gotten a new material through manufacturing, we then make it available to other fashion brands or to the industry at large. So it's the exact opposite of exclusivity. We're not trying to hold these materials captive, and it's one about having kind of making faster change inside of the fashion industry. So really having what's the way we can have the largest impact sooner, which we desperately need, and also part of our bottom line where we can sell the materials and the kind of innovation in the manufacturing around it as contributing to the bottom line of our business model, which allows us, again, to have more research and to kind of move things forward faster. So we've developed a portfolio of new trademarks and innovations ourselves for inside the company, and I'll go through a few of these more in depth, but this is really largely about increasing biodiversity, things like plant and fruit fiber, which are, new combinations of waste like banana and pineapple, et cetera. And then we also have done a whole series of collaborations on looking at really like further reaching spaces where there's, existing startups or companies that may have been working on something for 15 years. The startup may be around for 5, but the research has been in labs for 20 or 25 years. And how do we move this faster to get their materials into a commercial product like ours? So it's this really combined model of building a bridge, because scientists and fashion brands are like oil and water when they're trying to communicate and get a product out, and there's a whole bottleneck there. So we've sort of built a process where we can move an innovation through where something isn't, slightly out of the lab. It has to have been sort of proven, but it's not fully commercially ready for a fashion brand which does not have an internal R&D department to really foster and move that innovation through their manufacturing and supply chain network. So, and I'll go through and talk about these a little bit more, but that's the bottom line, us combining our own, kind of early stage, middle stage research with the power of the future of startups that are in this space. So, in general, we talk about what's coming next in materials, and I think that this is important, and these are the ones that I've pulled out for sort of both early, medium, and long-term spaces. So waste valorization, carbon capture, biofabrication, and programmable physical chemistry. So first, in terms of waste valorization, this is a lot about agricultural waste. So there are literally millions upon millions of species of plants that grow things that could be fibers. We have optimized cotton, absolutely, because it's a great fiber, but we've also over-industrialized it. And this is really important when I talk about the balancing, right? We want to continue to use cotton in responsible ways where it's meant to be grown and where we can grow it regeneratively, but there are so many other fibers that we have yet to kind of optimize, and that we're just kind of getting our heads around as scientists and as textile engineers. So we've developed a series of materials that are kind of utilizing a range of new fibers. So we combine things like pineapple, banana, seaweed, Himalayan nettle, bamboo, abaca. There's a whole series of these fibers. And what we've done is develop 2 trademarked materials that are kind of material families, which are called plant and fruit fiber. And the point was that we wanted to work on a series of blends that had no cotton in them, but that behaved beautifully like soft jersey, and we now have a woven as well. But it was a point to show that we could do this. When people think of agricultural waste or anything in this thing, they think of something's going to be like harsh and sort of, hemp-like, kind of burlap. This is not at all. We can do incredible textile engineering to make them very soft, while also not using any toxins or softeners, et cetera. So this is where we're coming from as a place of innovation in agricultural waste. Himalayan nettle is a special species. Nettle is an incredible fiber that's been underutilized. It's like 10 times stronger than even hemp. We have a partnership with the Women's Collective in the Himalayas, and this is literally grows as a weed, and they collect it and do the initial kind of processing. And this is a good story of high-tech naturalism and high-tech, low-tech, where gathering is something that's a weed, and then we send it off to our innovative and / production facility in Turkey that specializes in denim, and there they worked with a denim guru to literally get it into a softened state where it could be blended with organic cotton to create a kind of a really rugged but also soft denim. And the thing that's it's funny about nettle was like it was originally, when they put it into the machines, it was breaking the machines. It was too strong for the machine. So a lot of the innovation had to do with literally like wetting it, pressing it, letting it rest for a particular amount of time. Like innovation, but not like just really process and deep material knowledge and respect. So here's our Pangaia nettle denim line, first in its class, and we're now selling nettle as a fiber, selling the denim, and we're also combining nettle with recycled cashmere now, which is really exciting because one of the problems with recycled cashmere is that it tends to really shred a lot easier than virgin, but but this is a way to make it durability with the softness of cashmere. So next up, seaweed, which is incredibly special to me, algae, seaweed. And seaweed was in one of the very first product that we released as Pangaia. It was about 5% seaweed to organic cotton, but this is all about kind of levels of moving forward. But that first seaweed was actually collected from Icelandic farms, so it was farmed. It was harvested responsibly in a way that the kind of community would regenerate. But next up, which is what I've been working on in the last 6 months, is looking at waste seaweed. And we all know about the problem. I mean, we're in Miami, sargassum taking over our beaches. So I've been in collaboration with 5 other startups and Invest Puerto Rico to create an actual sustainable supply chain where we collect all the sargassum either from the water, from the beaches, characterize it, detoxify it, and set up an actual kind of modular biorefinery that's in a shipping container that you literally drop on the beach, collect the seaweed wet, process it, and you take out things like cellulose, alginate, lipids, you break down the organism into all the different raw material supply chains so you add value. And then so it's a job creation mechanism. That's why the Puerto Rican government is interested in it, but you're also getting out nutrients from the waste. So this is, kind of the dream of the future, is to have this kind of model for a whole lot of different material supply chains. So this is one of our seaweed t-shirts at Pangaia. So this is what I was saying about the kind of thinking about an organism as having multiple levels of raw material supply that can go into many, many different products is a really important way to think about the future of supply chains. So what we call it side streaming inside of what we do. And for this, we have turned this into, for now, a series of puffer jackets. So these are 100% bio and plant-based. And we're looking at expanding into, you can imagine, duvets, everything in home goods, et cetera. So again, another example. We also work with different kinds of alternative leathers, and this is a whole other topic, but this is the one that we're closest to that is actually 100% bio-based, and it does use waste biomass as its primary component. It's a product called Miram, and these are our accessories that we've done in that. And then, expanding on this waste valorization concept, we're also looking at our own textile waste, so pre-consumer textile waste, and inside of our manufacturing site in Portugal, we share facilities with a large, responsible and sort of innovative production supplier. It's like a manufacturing campus where it has knitting, dyeing, everything on site, and we collect all the waste from our factories, and they get sorted by color and moved into this new facility, which is what they call their 360 facility, and that gets spun into new textiles, new fibers, new yarns. And we have particular things in our collection, so we have our basic bright colors and neutrals that we release as our main collection, and then we have our re-waste collection, and there's certain colors that are only made as waste, so there's no over-dyeing or anything. So this peach that you see, that's only a waste color, right? So we're trying to kind of look at the aesthetic, and it was a really fun process to just take all our waste and be like, what if we put these 2 together? What if we put these 3 together, right? So thinking about that as also an aesthetic exercise. Okay, moving on to carbon capture. We have done a lot of work around the space of thinking about the different forms of carbon. So this is sort of what I think of as the low end of carbon, meaning the black soot that appears literally in factories and cars. And this is a collaboration with a company called Airink, founded by a friend of mine from MIT who's Indian, and he went home and literally started collecting soot from around the cities and his car, et cetera, and figured out how to capture and characterize and detoxify that and put it into a really amazing dark black ink. I mean, carbon black is the best form of black that we have, and it's non-synthetic, but making sure that it was detoxified. So we had this collection, and yes, that is Naomi Campbell. it's like high and low. She wanted to model it for us, but we use it for the ink on all of these products, and we've now incorporated it into our general kind of supply chain of print. So, sorry. And then at the high-tech level of carbon capture, this is what we think about more as sort of this direct air capture. And literally, this is a company called 12 in Silicon Valley that takes in CO2 from the atmosphere and converts it with water. It's what we call industrial photosynthesis, inverse industrial photosynthesis, to create the base chemistry for various plastics. And the lenses for these glasses are made from polycarbonate that is literally from direct air capture. So you can make materials from air. That's a thing. They also have figured out how to do protein with it. It's about breaking down the CO2 into different things. So these were very expensive to make. Let's start with that. This is not available tomorrow, but that's the point, is that everything that we are building is, everything has an actual end to the supply chain in terms of it becoming cheaper. This is not it's not a concept car. What it is a kind of step toward the final actual efficient production. So that's where we're at with this. Quick video here. So that's the osmosis machine that they've developed. Very simply, but simplified. And then moving into biofabrication. So this is where we actually have figured out a lot. We have, we've sequenced the human genome, so we understand DNA very well, and we're able to basically look at all different kinds of organisms and break down the DNA and figure out which parts create different materials within the structure. So one of the biofabricated areas that we worked on is brood protein, which is based on spider silk. So this is with a company called Spiber that literally takes the DNA of spiders, puts it in, transforms it into microbes, and then inside of bioreactors grows this material, which is incredibly strong, and you can easily, well, not easily, but you can tweak all the properties of it in varying ways. But everything that we love about silk, how it's soft and strong at the same time and is such an incredible material, we can start to grow this sustainably without any animals involved, and also in a level of production. Yeah. And in the same genre of biofabrication is bacterial-based dyes, where we're working with a company called Colorifics, transforming DNA from a plant that creates a specific color, putting it into an organism and growing it, and similar. And last thing in biofabrication, we've done a few different releases inside of beauty, and this is looking at lab-grown palm oil. So the same way, biofabricated palm oil, so that we stop actually cutting down rainforests to create palm oil. And then last area to move into is programmable physical chemistry, which is where we're looking at all sorts of invisible treatments that we can do without toxic chemicals. We can do it through laser plasma physics. And this is a kind of new area to get at the invisible toxins of fashion. And then also in this space is the notion of biosynthetics, which is looking at how we can start with bio-based molecules and feedstocks and program new different kinds of chemicals to mimic synthetic production, but still be bio-based and biodegradable at the same time. So we've done this for our plant-based activewear. We're not fully 100% there yet, but we're getting there little by little. And then we also do a kind of analysis inside of our supply chain, and we want to share that with you. So every one of our products has what we call digital passport, run by a company called Eon, which provides transparency information all about where your product's made, and then what it's made of, et cetera. And then going forward, it allows you to also have an access to resale in our resale platform. So it's looking about the whole life cycle of our product. Yeah, so you can scan it on your phone through the QR code, and then look at where it was made, how it was made, and also look at it having a future life. And speaking of life cycle assessments, oops, oh yeah, that's there. Speaking of life cycle assessments, we do this on 95% of our materials, down to as much degree of primary data that we can get, and publish all of this. We have a huge impact report at the end of the year every year. And that's a hugely important part of understanding what our impact is in our carbon footprint. We also are looking at that inside of our kind of retail spaces. We've mostly only done pop-ups. We're opening our first retail store in London in a month, and that has been carefully analyzed, made of local materials, but really assessing if we're going to have a retail store, what is its impact going to be, and how do we justify it. And last point is to say, when we think about press and this idea of getting public information, scientific communication, the horrible nature of greenwashing, I like to say, carbon is the new black. We're looking at kind of all the ways to use that inside of fashion. And then humility is the new green. So instead of trying to overclaim, which is where we get into the problems of greenwashing, we're trying to explain to people, we've done this, and this is why it's good. We haven't gotten as far as we need to yet. But I think it's a relationship between consumers and the public and fashion brands, so that when we say, well, we've gotten 50% of the way there, no one's attacking us for not getting the other 50% of the way there. And this is a huge problem inside of recognizing that we're in this journey, and we have to be kind of partners in it together, and to be kind of just being honest with each other and transparent. And with that, I'm going to leave you with this last thought, which I think an affirmation of biodiversity. Oops, I went the wrong way. Which is to say, most of the science and organisms that we don't know what is going on out there in science. It's really about this humility in the face of understanding the natural world. And so I think about this a lot. It's from one of my favorite books, A Natural History of the Future. I'm large in a world of small species. I'm multicellular in a world of single-celled species. I am named in a world of nameless species. Most of what is knowable is not yet known. Thank you.